Live from Emerald City in Seattle, Washington, the UFO, Bigfoot, and paranormal hotspot of the Pacific Northwest, directly to you listening in around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Sunday. I'm your host, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer, occupying the captain's chair tonight for SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including all of our listeners in the digital side at Revolution Radio. And don't forget, you can always check out our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us all a favor and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on our Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by donating to Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. And tonight is January 31st, 2021 already. I can't believe the entire first month of January has flown by already. And we, of course, have our good buddy here, Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center, heading up the first half hour of the show. And we have a special guest, a UFO witness, a live witness on the line by the name of Jake, who has a historical sighting that we are going to have regaled to us here in the next few moments. And then our main guest for the evening will be Jared Murphy, our good buddy, who is an author and a researcher and a person that gets into the idea that, hey, it might not be aliens, it might be worse, it could be us. And we're going to be talking about the idea of evolution on the planet being a lot longer, potentially, than we have ever thought. So welcome to Spaced Out Sunday, everyone. And first of all, let's bring Peter on the line. Are you there, Peter Davenport?
I'm here. Read you loud and clear, Michael.
All right, wonderful. And Jared Murphy, are you there, buddy?
I am here.
Okay, we got the whole gang. And now, Peter, without further ado, I don't want to waste any time here in introducing our interesting guest that you brought on as a live witness. I understand his name, or at least his moniker tonight, is going to be Jake. So I'll let you take it over, Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our guest, I preface by thanking our guest for staying up late. He's much further east than we are on the Pacific coast, so it's pretty late for him, and I'm terribly grateful to him. But for the last 37 months, the UFO community has heard nothing but reports have come from the Navy. The 2004 incident, the 2015 incident over the Atlantic Ocean, the first one over the Pacific, of course. But tonight we're going to hear from a gentleman who he thinks the date was November of 1969, was assigned to a Nike Hercules anti-aircraft missile battery, or facility anyway. I don't know if it was a battery. I don't know what a battery is, but he has consented to come on tonight to join the program and share with us the details of a sighting he experienced back in November of '69 in West Germany. And I'm really looking forward to it. He writes well, he speaks well, and my suspicion is he's an excellent witness. And I'm really looking forward to having Jake share with our audience what happened, what would that be, 51 years ago, or 52 years ago, perhaps. So I'll turn it over to you, Jake, and just share with our audience what you experienced back then.
Okay. I'm going to start by saying I've seen all these disclosures, UFO disclosures recently, and it just prompted me to bring this event that happened to me back in Germany out and write about it. And so this event took place in a Nike Herc battery, Charlie Battery 371, and there was a battery control officer and 9 operators and maintenance crew that was involved in this event that we tracked. We actually tracked, we acquired and we tracked and documented the movements of this UFO for about 10 minutes. And that could be more or less, my age and memory is just not as good as it used to be, but I just want to explain the document. I want to explain the man and crew and crew's experience in selecting and tracking and recording this UFO. This event took place in around November '69, as I remember. The UFO took. What we did as a crew, we would pull 6-hour checks on the weapon system, the Nike Herc system. Every 6 hours, we would do our checks and adjustments, and then finalize it with a tracking test where we pick up a live target, and assign it to radars, and then the computer would compare the azimuth, range, elevation of each radar to see if all the radars were tracking in at one target. And this happened. This event happened as we were doing our midnight checks, as I said. I won't go into all the equipment, but we had the Nike Herc system was an exceptionally system to track targets. It was very, very accurate. As long as you did your checks and adjustments and got everything ready, you could track almost any target anytime. And so, to go on, we were doing our checks at midnight. We got everything aligned to the tech manuals, according to the tech manuals. And then I picked up a target. I picked up a target this particular night. It just looked like a regular target coming out of Frankfurt. And it was heading on an azimuth of 120 to 150 degrees, if I remember right. And so I assigned that target over to the tracking radars, who locked on the target, and it started after I assigned it. The target to the operators in the other band, they would lock on the target, and they did that night. And the radars were showing that it was a normal target traveling in 9 degrees, but then all of a sudden the target, it just stopped in range, and it stayed in the same elevation plane the whole time, and I could still see the target on the scope. Every sweep of the rotation of the radar, the acquisition radar, every sweep, it would show that this blip is what I call it at that time on the scope. And it was still showing, even though it was standing still. I don't remember the elevation, but it was, like a normal target elevation. And then it just started left. 1 or 2 sweeps go by, and it would be left, I'd say an inch on the scope, maybe. And then it would go 1 or 2 sweeps, and it would be right on the scope. And I said, well, maybe there's something wrong with the equipment. But then I just noticed that the computer dials were tracking it, and it was correlating with what the radars are tracking. And so I told myself at that time, I said, this is probably not a regular target. It looked like a UFO to me. I was aware of UFOs at that time. But it didn't show any speed. It showed a little elevation movement. And it was all verified by the computer. and verified by the computer. And then what we did is we told our higher headquarters that we had an unknown in the system, which we did, because it just didn't look right to me as a regular aircraft flying in a direction. And so we called higher headquarters, and I don't remember if this is right or not, but I think we went to battle stations at that time, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I said, well, this is something that's strange. So I turned on the plotting board paper and the event recorder paper, and so we started tracking this thing. You can stop me anytime you want to. We started tracking this UFO. It did this right and left maneuver several different times, and then it started going up in elevation, and it went up fairly slow at first, and then it started going up faster and faster and faster. Now, we had an analog computer at that time, and we had dials that showed the numbers of azimuth, the azimuth, the elevation, range, and speed. It would show that on the computer dials. Well, the elevation dial just started zinging. I mean, it was going so fast that the tracking radars were keeping up with it. I mean, this high quality radars that keep up with this target, and it just went straight up. No movement left to right anymore, just straight up. And the computer dials, like I said, was just a blur. You couldn't read the dials at all. The elevation dial.
Hey, Jake, at that point, this is Michael. Did you notice that this was something that you've never seen before, or is this something you've seen before?
No, I've never seen this before. I knew that it was a normal target, and so when it started doing when it stopped in range and it stopped in speed, I knew that this was something different than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, and when you say regular target, are you saying that they send things to you just so you can track them, that you are known targets?
No, well, these are targets. What we did in those sites is we would pick up targets coming out of airports, like Frankfurt Airport, a regular target. Regular airplane flying from Frankfurt to Europe to somewhere in the south or whatever.
Okay.
Whatever targets of opportunity is what we call them.
Got it.
So I got this target. It's up in elevation. So we lost this thing somewhere around 100,000 feet.
Oh my!
And that, to me, I don't know of any aircraft that can do that I know of.
In a relatively 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds?
Oh yeah, it was less than 10 seconds. Yes, it was so fast. When it started up slow in elevation, then it just picked up speed like a flash. 5 to 10 seconds, it was gone. And the radars tracked it. They held on to it. They didn't lose lock on it until somewhere around 100,000 feet.
You know, the reason I ask you that, Jake, is that a couple of my clients that were Nimitz UFO tic-tac, observers on the USS Nimitz, Commander or Petty Officer Kevin Day says that literally he tracked that tic-tac from about 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean in 0.78 seconds. 0.78 seconds.
Yeah. It could have been that fast. I don't remember.
Wow.
All I know is it was very, very fast.
Yeah.
It was gone. It was gone. Once it reached 100,000 feet, I no longer had a blip on the target, so it was gone in a couple sweeps.
Fascinating.
Of the PPI. Well, the next day, we performed our final checks the next morning around, we started at 6 o'clock, and we finished the 6-hour checks, and then about 7 o'clock or 7:30, somewhere around there, the Air Force came up to the building that we were in and asked to see the plotting board papers and the event recorders paper. And of course we gave it to them both, and it was, I think it was a major and a listed guy, but I don't remember if it was or it wasn't. It could have been anybody, but all I know they were Air Force. And they took the paper and both papers and left, and we never heard any more about it. So I just, maybe somebody will know that was there that night, because I have not been in contact with anybody from that group except for a friend of mine in El Paso. And maybe somebody will hear this or see this report, and maybe they'll give y'all some more information about it.
So, in other words, there were other individuals like yourself there that were witnessing this at the same time?
Yes.
Approximately how many do you think were in the room?
They were probably, we're in vans. We had a battery control van and a radar control van. And in the radar control van, there was 3 people. And in the battery control van, there was probably 3 to 4 people in there that night.
Jake, this is Peter.
In addition to that, we had maintenance technicians also there. I think we had 1 in each van. We had 8 or 9 people total.
Did both those vans have radar screens in them so people could see the target on a screen at the time it was visible?
Yes, the tracking van, it would show up as a blip, like a scope, a oscilloscope. You ever seen an oscilloscope where it had those lines, or you see the heart monitors in the hospitals where you got these pointed lines going up and down? Well, what that would be, when you lock on the target with the TTR tracking radar, you would see those, you see a blip like that single arc, and that means it was locked on. So the tracking radar would lock on it, the missile tracking radar would lock on it, and the target ranging radar would lock on it. And then all that information was fed to the computer in the other van where I was located, in the BC van. I was the acquisition operator that night, and I was also OJTing as a maintenance man at that time. So the battery control officer was in there with us that night, and the computer operator and the switchboard operator. So, there was a lot of people that witnessed it.
I can imagine the conversation was quite lively at the time that this was happening.
Oh yeah, we were all ecstatic about what had just happened, and everybody agreed at that time that they thought it was a UFO. Of course, we didn't have anything that would say that anything different, but the event recorder and the plotting board paper had tracked all the data that we saw on the radars, both the tracking radars and the acquisition radars. It would have copied all that data down, so they had all that data when they left.
I'm sitting here imagining this situation in my mind. I feel you're lucky that target, let's call it a UFO, didn't take an exception at being painted with 2 radars by an anti-aircraft missile battery.
I don't know why it didn't. One other thing I left out too is the IFF, identification friend of foe. We challenged that target with that IFF, and we did not get a response from it. If it had been a friendly target, we would have got a response from it.
Yeah.
Oh my! Now, Was there any way to tell how far away from your position this thing was at the time? And we've got the idea of how far or how fast it went, how slow it went, and the trajectory straight up. But how far away was this event from your installation?
I would say it was probably 25 to 30 miles.
Ah.
So it may have been over Frankfurt. I think you said you were looking.
Well, yeah, but it was coming from Frankfurt. Our battery was between, Frankfurt was north of us, and so it was coming from Frankfurt, flying by the battery, but 25 miles away when I picked it up as an outboard target.
Oh.
Now that's fascinating in the fact that you were in Germany, and I know that we're going to be talking with Jared Murphy here in the bulk of the show later on with the idea of advanced civilizations and breakaway societies and stuff. I don't know if you want to comment, Jared, on the idea that maybe this could be advanced technology from human races on the planet themselves.
Well, it's it's hi Jake, by the way. It's really fascinating to always hear stories from people who have actually seen things like this, especially when they come from incredibly reliable sources like this. And it's never at least in our vernacular, when you start hitting our age group, but I think this is related, is that we assume that they are alien, that they are from somewhere else. And then as we dive into our idea of plastic surgery and now designer babies and designer genes, we are starting to understand spintronics and quantum computing, and we're starting to understand gene therapies are not just alchemy recipes, but actual programmable genes, and that there are, the idea that these UFOs, there's a good possibility that a very well advanced human civilization made it through multiple catastrophes over tens of thousands of years, but that's a different part of the story. What's important is that everybody should keep tabling these observations and these sightings, because even the United States military has admitted, well, we don't know what they are. And I don't think they're saying it, and when they say, hey, they want our help, they want us to look at it, there's no way that we're the most interesting anthropological study in the galaxy. I mean, I like to think we're interesting, but based on all the evidences in the ground, I mean, just to give people a background, that's why I'm going into the longer question and answer here, but just that I do think that there's a good possibility that a segment of an advanced Asian human race may have made it, and what we mistake for aliens may be our ancestors that have the perfect ability to genetically modify themselves to be translucent, white, large black eyes with infrared frequency energy-based display systems, just like our fighter pilots have weapons systems that they can connect with their mind. It's kind of the same deal, where if you're going to take 0-point turns and a tic-tac at if you're going to go 100,000 feet at Mach whatever, you might need to be smaller and built differently, but our assumption is when we see them that, well, they must be from somewhere else, and it's not in the paradigm that it could be from a group of ancient humans that live here. But I have questions.
We're going to talk about that in more depth for sure. Yeah. But I just thought I would throw that out there for you, Jared, and thank you, Jake, for this whole idea of, the idea that, my goodness, coming out of Germany, literally is a target that you physically and your own self locked or had the capability of locking on, and then does all of these strange maneuvers that you had never seen before. Did you ever see something like that since, Jake?
No, I have not. Nothing.
Yeah.
I look up in the sky looking for UFOs every once in a while, and I have never seen one either. So I'm sure they're there. I believe they're there. Actually, I know they're there because of this kind of proves it.
Well,
we track one.
Jake, I have a question for you. Did even though you didn't see them, did you meet other people who saw them, or had similar experiences within that field of. I don't want to give away anything that would still be classified or anything. I'm just asking if there's anybody else that had the same observations, or you heard further from some of those associates that did have similar experiences, maybe from another base or from around the country or the world.
There are documented. There were at least when I was doing research on trying to swim back up on this system. There were other batteries that had experienced UFOs, and so and I don't remember who they were or how many they were, but to answer your question, yeah, there are other military organizations that have experienced these.
Yeah, I just don't know if you talk about it, like you said, it's, even in the time period today, like the Tic Tac, they didn't want to talk about it. So for you, I was just curious if...
You're fading out there, Jared. You got to get closer to the mic.
Wow. Is it there? How's my volume now?
Very low for some reason. Really low. Anyway.
I hear you good.
Okay.
Well, that's the question, is whether or not you just had any personal friends that were able to, like, once you got talking about it, if any of them else revealed, it's always interesting to get the 1 or 2 degree separation of, similar activity, or, I think there's always those cases for, I'm always wondering if there's patterns to when they do certain sightings, when we see that, stuff like that, just...
Yeah. Well, Peter, let me not cut you out of the conversations here, but you might have some follow-up questions for Jake as well.
I'm enjoying just sitting here taking it all in, Michael. It's been a wonderful experience. I'd like to go back to a question, Jake, that Michael put to you, and that is with regard to the altitude. You mentioned you saw the object move left and right on radar, and it paused for a bit and then started moving vertically slowly and then accelerated. When it was hovering, before it started moving vertically, what would you estimate its altitude at? Can you estimate that at all?
No, we had it on record, but the thing of it is, I would say that, from my memory, it was probably 20,000 feet.
Yeah. So while you were tracking it, it went from roughly that estimated altitude, 15 or 20,000 feet, to over 100,000 feet. And
Yeah.
what was the elapsed time again? Would you say?
I think it was somewhere. A couple sweeps, it was gone. A couple sweeps, which would be about 3 to 5. Let's see. I'm trying to remember the rotation. It would be less than 10 seconds, probably.
Oh boy.
Fascinating.
So, covered 85,000 feet vertically in 10 seconds or less.
Yeah. Oh my.
That'd be my best guess.
And of course, all of that data would have been recorded on those papers that were taken by the Air Force officers.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Every bit of that, what I'm telling you about, and a more accurate report. If you ever found those reports, would show what I'm saying is true, but maybe not totally accurate, because I don't remember all the small details.
Yeah.
Oh my.
One other short question, Jake. You were in the Army. The Army is in command of anti-aircraft batteries, but you said it was Air Force personnel who showed up and requested information from you. Why was it the Air Force and not the Army?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. What I believe is, when I reported this to, or the battery control officer, I think, reported it to the Battalion Operations Center, I think they had a Air Force liaison associated with them, or they had contacted the Air Force to come down and get those papers.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a fascinating story, Jake. I can't thank you enough for your having stayed up so late and shared this story with so many people.
yes, Jake, thank you very much. We're going to have to take our break at the bottom of the hour now. But
Okay.
I really want to thank you again for coming on live on Spaced Out Sunday to be able to relay the story. And obviously the Senate Intelligence Committee has given a deadline of middle of March before some of these things are going to be unclassified. Maybe you're going to learn some more about your own event at that point.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be great.
Yeah. Well, if you, we will be in touch, I'm sure. If you need to get any more information out, you can always get a hold of us at any time, because we're always here to give you a platform to be able to tell us more. But Peter, thank you very much for all of this wonderful work you did today in bringing Jake on. And we will take our break now and be right back with more of Spaced Out Sunday after this break.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Spaced Out Radio fans,
It's John Resnick,
founder of the Chive and Chive Charities.
Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from dance and therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumblefoot?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce has come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumblefoot. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
At SpacedOutRadio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at SpacedOutRadio.com today.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you addicted to the woo? Good. Me too. This is Dave Scott, and you can woo it up with me every Monday through Friday, starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, for 3 hours of great entertainment in the subjects you love. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, intuition. Yes, we hit it all 5 days a week. Look for us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, my friends, we own the night.
You want a new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Need that weekend's supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best in paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the mighty new beard oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckford, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as TESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines Report on the Spaced Out Radio website and let's figure out what's going on together.
The evidence from the historical record, legends and myths from around the world are shouting that it wasn't aliens, that the advanced technologies are potentially echoes of human society that we do not have any written record of. We have the remnants of their buildings, their genes, the sciences that point to a highly advanced human race that survived multiple catastrophes and that to this day may even live among us. And with that, we are bringing back a good friend of our show, Spaced Out Sunday, Jared Murphy, the author, the researcher, the futurist, I call him. Jared, thank you for being with us again today on Spaced Out Sunday.
Oh, thanks for having me back. This is awesome.
Awesome. Well, and yeah, that was a fascinating report that we were privileged enough to get from firsthand. From an Army military man, literally that's a sighting of a UFO that's a 50-year-old report.
Yeah, it's super incredible. I'm assuming, I don't know if it was having all four people on, but do I sound all right?
You're sounding much better now, yeah. It was a little low there for a bit there during that last part before the break, but I think we're back on track now.
Okay, great. I didn't change anything, but just wanted to make sure before we get too far into it. That report, I love these reports. I think it's so important. I think I told you I had a friend of mine. He's a bit a total logical. He was a architect, not a UFO guy at all. And he and 8 friends, like a scene out of Stand By Me, they were all together. They were going to go play baseball, and he looks up, and it wasn't 1 or 2. He said it was basically a fleet. It was like 5 or 6 UFO saucer-type craft that stopped above their heads. They could see them. He goes, Jared, our hearts stopped. We all stopped. They stopped. We looked up. It felt like we were being watched, and then they just left. And it was crazy because it wasn't like 1. It was 5 or 6, and they hovered. They didn't move. They were not 500 feet or 1,000 feet or 100,000 feet in the air. They were, they were 5-6 stories off the ground, and they just took off. And I feel like there are stories like this over and over. And I do think a lot of it, like my publisher, Olaf Phillips, I think a lot of this can be said. You can go to California. You could just get a set of night vision goggles. There is some weird, unexplainable, just fantastic space traffic. It's crazy how much stuff is moving around up there once you can observe it, and it's not moths, and it's not eagles, it's not bats, it's not satellites. I'm talking about zigzagging up, down, there's so many different UFOs, the triangular, 3 light-shaped ones. There's so many things, and I've seen them myself. Personally, I've seen them with the night vision goggles that Alex Hoffman makes for Camp Pendleton. I mean, military-grade night vision goggles. I've seen them myself, and I've been to Giant Rock, Big Rock. I've been to California, and I've spent hours watching the same things. And it's not that there couldn't be UFOs that are in the sense extraterrestrial, but you have to literally ignore the significant amount of findings on the ground that there are frequency wave technology involved in not only the creation and movement of these giant stones, but in the material sciences that would go along with the technology of cutting and moving and measuring and managing the frequencies of these stone spheres, of the placement of engineered soil, ancient engineered soil called terra preta or Chernozems, or other man-made biochars. That's the modern term, biochars. But they're in soil in places that were supposed to be nomadic. They're not just recent. They're not from, it's from maybe a slash and burn from a society that was Neolithic and they lived a couple thousand years ago. No. This is stuff that is 7,000, 8,000 years old in places that there weren't supposed to be any people. And they are, again, it's not just that. It's underwater ruins, and not ones that are just off the coast of Rome, just Italian or Egyptian ruins. Everyone, like the Sunken Cities tour of Alexandria. We find lots of contemporary finds. I'm talking like the city off the coast of Cuba. At a minimum, it couldn't have been, it's 2,300 feet deep. It couldn't have been above water sooner than maybe 50,000 years ago. And then we have very interesting mainstream facts like Denisovan and Neanderthal mixed with humans about 50,000 years ago. Well, was it a little bit earlier than that? So what was the big dynastic flood in that period? I think that's the thing that might have been the last massive cataclysm. Whatever sunk that city off of Cuba, and that's just one of many, many sites around the globe that are underwater at depths that can only be explained in that they were cities above water at different epochs of time, that based on whether you think it's a land bridge / ice sheet time period, even with plate shifting and hydroponic plate shifting, hydrostatic water got under the plates, and there's a theory about that, but all of it adds up to a large period of time where humans were on this planet doing giant megalithic cymatic polygonal construction, maintaining and not just managing earthquakes and engineering soil for growth of food, but filtering heavy metals, filtering chemicals like carbon dioxide from what could have been a very industrialized, well-populated world. But it clearly fell. Was it weaponized? Was it a natural disaster, or both? What we're left with is clear indications of whether it's the Incas or dynastic peoples taking over all these places, adapting or creating a society out of what they found to mimic, like the Egyptians or like the Aztecs or the Mayans or the Olmecs, the Toltecs. I mean, we have a very limited snapshot of our complete history, but we do have, whether it's Easter Island, Angkor Wat, Egypt, all across the world, we have polygonal construction. We have dolmens. We have standing stones that really look like the remaining elements of large structural pillars from buildings that have long dusted, but we have weird gene cuts, like you said. And to make this introduction a little less long, all I'm saying is that the ancillary technologies, whether it's in my book or the work I'm working on now, what we have is societies that have clearly leveled and mastered a technology that doesn't span to moving big heavy rock to stack on other big heavy rock. The ancillary technology would include engineering not just soil, but people and animals. And what we look at as technology now in reference to these machines that we're on, and like the keyboard in front of you, or that leg lamp from Christmas Story, still feels like Christmas, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. So I think that there is good indicators that the technology that we have around us is just not what they would call technology. It might be biological, and we're still discovering. Just to point this out to everyone. And Michael Cremo is the first one that put it on my radar. But starting at about, I don't know, in the 70s, we started tracking how many things we really were keeping track of. How many things were we discovering on a yearly basis? 3,500 to 5,000 living entities are discovered every year for the last 40 years. We are not done discovering life as we know it on Earth, whether it's a bat, a forgotten, thought extinct creature of not a bacterial size, but we also do find bacteria and we do find fungus, and they are not just simple networks. We went from deciding that the largest organism on Earth was Pando, which was a set of trees that were, this one forest was one living entity, and we thought that's huge. It used to be much larger than it is, but it's tens of thousands of trees, and yet we have a fungal network that is even bigger, and yet if you combine that fungal network, which is a living organism that spans a few square miles, you could, again, account for what would be your genetic abilities with something like synesthesia, where you combine all your senses with the electromagnetic. We know that there's an electromagnetic property with walking in bare feet on the Earth. There's an electron exchange. But what if it was more than that when we weren't 10 to 15% conscious? What if it was 100 or 80 or 90% consciousness, and that reawakening, this quickening that we're experiencing? What if it was walk on electromagnetic, piezoelectric engineered soil, and it has nothing to do with just growing food. It has to do with the fact that it's filtering those heavy metals and carbon dioxides and helping you hit the right frequency and communicate with a whole other end of the planet or with another person. Yeah. These are abilities that we have to just table the facts of the things we find. And fortunately, we have people flying around, or someone's flying around still, calls this place home. And we, outside of military UFOs, which I think there are plenty of military technologies that we are not privileged to, but we have enough people reporting to people like you, and thank God enough people like you paying attention, that we have, I think, a pool of knowledge of and witnesses of interactions that we can actually start discern, at least from our limited view. We could say, that looks like it was probably military. But then we have things like the Tic Tac, where it's like, that wasn't military. That was definitely not military. And like this report tonight, holy crap, we have the lithographs of the Nuremberg scene. We talked about it last time, I think, where, 900, 1,000 people at least, are watching in the aerial combat in the 1600s above Nuremberg. That's incredible. So now what do we do with these facts? And it's opening people's eyes and the paradigm and the narrative to not shift it away completely from, do we have extraterrestrial visitors? That's not the point. But based on our paleoanthropological record, not only have we been active as anatomically correct humans for much longer than this house of cards that's fallen and burned away, but we have clearly reached higher levels of technology. It's seen in not only our gene cuts, but our rediscovery of abilities like what Wim Hof can do and what he's teaching and what we're learning, which is conscious control of our immune system, conscious control of our heating and cooling, and of our inflammatory response. The reality is that those are just a fraction of different techniques that have now gone from being secret to being public, and these superhuman abilities are really just our abilities. But instead of being 10 to 15% conscious, what are we capable of this higher rate, and how do we all connect? And well, all that does is it isn't a separate technology from the technology of the wave and frequency, energy and matter of a society that is moving not just 3,000 ton blocks, but measuring in the earth and over how does this polygonal structure work against not only this earthquake, but how does it work to communicate? Why is it quartz? Why are they... The mechanics of the technology of these buildings are one thing. The mechanics of our genes are something else. But when you look at them all together, this whole planet does appear to be, at one point, at least once, and maybe not after the Younger Dryas, not prior Younger Dryas, but at least at that 50,000, 60,000 year last complete smash up, this is a society that was global, and they were very, 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 very advanced. And the indications of that are still numerous beyond what I've even discussed. And so now, here we are with non-military UFOs, and the first assumption for us as this reawakening happens is, well, gosh, they got to be from somewhere else. And then you pointed to the past and went, all these big ruins are from somewhere else, because clearly you're an anthropological, alien, interdimensional, space-traveling species, and you're like, boy, those buggers, they got a lot of time in between hunting and gathering. Let's teach them to make really big buildings, and then that'll really mess with people in the future.
Very good point.
and that there's no other point. I mean, what are they going to do with it? Oh, no, follow this. They're going to use it for tombs. Yeah. And then you know, we always talk about the pyramids, but one of the things that doesn't frequently get brought up, Baalbek, Lebanon, a lot more light shining on the the trilithons, the large stones that are not only installed, but the ones that are in the quarry that are just a couple miles away. Yeah. But something that doesn't get pointed out as much as the columns at Baalbek, which are single. The originals are single column, 60-foot, single piece columns. So somebody has to put that on a lathe and spin it to get the size and the structure, what it looks like. And then just like the unfinished obelisk or the finished obelisks, which many of those were carried away from Egypt by the Egyptian or by the Romans, and they lost them. They are literally broken and or sunk in the middle of the ocean in the Mediterranean. They try to bring them back. But we can't duplicate this technology, but these columns, not just in Baalbek, Lebanon, but there are many places where the columns themselves and the complexity of what's carved either at the top or the bottom of them is a technology that it's not a matter of, it wasn't diorite banging balls. It wasn't slaves polishing until their skin fell off. The complexities of this stonework, I'm unlucky, I live in Minnesota. The quarries, the companies that were built to supply the Empire State Building, to supply the First National Bank Building, which is a historical landmark here in St. Paul. These are buildings that came from and have associations with quarries that are in Minnesota. There is Cold Spring is here. That's a very famous quarrying company. And so we have a lot of mining here in Minnesota beyond the taconite, the ores, and the Edmund Fitzgerald and Gordon Lightfoot and Duluth. Woo! You know, we have a lot going on in Minnesota. And as far as the quarries go, you go talk to I have photos in my book. I got to meet the most delightful retired 45-year quarry worker, and I would show him pictures of Baalbek of the columns. And he took me over to a 12-foot bank column. And I said, how long does it take to do that? And he goes, well, we work 8 to 12-hour shifts. It's 24 hours a day. And he looked at this 12-foot column, and the column was gorgeous. It looks like it would be up in front of a bank that would have been robbed by Machine Gun Kelly or Ma Barker and absolute gangster sort of bank from the 1900s or late 1800s or Jesse James sort of thing. And so here's this column. It's very pretty. And I said, how long did it take to make that? And he goes, 24 hours a day, 4 to 6 man crew, polishing for 6 to 9 weeks. And that's a 12-foot. And by the way, that column was about maybe 2 feet wide. 2 feet wide. A little bit up, about not even twice the size of your monitor that I'm looking at there that you're using. This is not a wide, thick column, but it was 12 feet tall. It had the little ornate section at the top and the ornate section at the bottom. But it would take 6 guys a month and a half to 3 months, 24 hours a day. And now we're looking at 60-foot, perfectly hewn columns. And this is just not like engineered soil. This is not one of those sexy subjects where when we're getting the mechanics, people talk about it's like engineer Christopher Dunn has sorted out some of the logistics and laser cutting, or the Serapeum is becoming more and more and more popular to discuss, because there is example after example of a very finely hewn, engineered, what's left that doesn't rot easy, like wood or plastic or glass or repurposed metals, are these giant diorite or quartzite boxes in the Serapeum. And there are many, many measurements of not only the unfinished obelisk, but whether it's a vase from the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, or whether it's these examples at Machu Picchu in South America, at Tiwanaku, all over. The reality is that the fine-tuning of, specifically the reason I brought up the columns, the fine-tuning of each of the tasks to complete for each of these different complex objects take not a matter of you having a really good single tool. It is taking into account not just lathes, but some sort of CNC, some sort of water jet cutter, some sort of frequency and technology machines that are on scales that we're not comprehending, let alone the equipment to move and cut these things. So then when you back that out and then table, well, what are the other technologies that society would have? Well, it comes full circle for you to easily know that if that society had gone through an epic disaster 50, 60,000 years ago, and they started collecting their technology of whatever had been washed away and completely obliterated, and coming out of the significant amount of rock-cut ruins. And I'm talking rock-cut ruins that are in America, rock-cut ruins that are not just in Turkey and tunnel and connect all over Europe, but all over the world. There are finely cut Petra, is something that's considered to be very interesting from Indiana Jones. Thanks for the reminder with your hat. And, very, very appropriate. And everyone thinks of the scene with Indiana Jones and his dad and Sean Connery at the bank, the vault, but it's not the complexity of that site are the rock-cut rooms that are to the volume of over 300,000 cubic square feet. 300,000 cubic square feet and larger and bigger. And though they're all rock-cut. And so the complexities that once tabled mixed with our gene cuts, here we are with a super advanced, crazy technologies that if they fell and it would take time to rebuild, like I can use the technology and I can apply some of my system, pre-show, I mentioned I used to be a system administrator. I can remember coding from when I was in the 5th and 6th grade, BASIC, some COBOL. I could not program today's technology. I couldn't program. Like I remember enough about HTML, but I also remember enough about machine coding, BIOS, ones and zeros. But if you asked me to make a motherboard or how to make those ones and zeros stay memorized, I would not be able to do it. I have friends that do math that have volume charts, and he's like, Jared, it took not one or two, but a lot of very brilliant mathematicians to take a can. And if you want the mathematical equations required for you to determine what is the volume within the container of liquid, that the volume tables took. He told me he was working on his PhD in I can't remember what kind of physics and math. What mattered to me was when he said, Jared, there are books and books and books of how to do these calculations, and each of them were incredible calculations to come up with, and they were done not by one or two or three, but an uncountable number of really brilliant mathematicians worked over hundreds of years to develop these systems. If we were wiped out tomorrow and we don't have digital access and we lose the books, what is the length of time it would take to recreate just the machine technology to spin out, not stuff down to the billionth of meter, but what would you do to just create a rudimentary weapon, hammer, just to get those things back on track?
That is a mind-boggling idea in itself, and it sounds like you've done the forensics to actually determine that in actually getting to the fact that we've got some civilization gaps here that we need to talk about. Listen, we're at the bottom of the hour. No, we're at the top of the hour already. Can you imagine? We've gone through one whole segment of the show. We're going to be taking our break for 6 minutes. We got plenty of time. You can do whatever you need to do, and we will come right back with more of Space Out Sunday after this. And oh my, this is going to be fun. So Jared Murphy, hang on. We're going to be right back.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot Hot Sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblelicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit. Bumble, we're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby. And tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Fall. Come tune into SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and we have some cool swag for you to pick up. All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend. Woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights right here at spacedoutradio.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Hi, this is Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world, and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Bresnick, founder of the Tribe and Tribe Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little different. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a ridiculous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor and Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Tribe Charities, just go to tribecharities.org/donate.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I'm bringing you the Woo every Monday through Friday on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going all out to bring you the strangest, oddest stories and subjects I can find for your entertainment. Why? Because when we hit peak Woo, I know I've done my job. So come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com, 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, and together, my friends, we own the night.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Sunday. I am your host, Michael W. Hall, the Paranormal Lawyer. Thanks for joining me. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, and UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans, Louisiana. And on the digital side, we're very proud to be on Revolution Radio. Don't forget, you can always check our archives for free at Spaced Out Radio, YouTube/Spaced Out Radio. Sorry about that. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And our website, of course, is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping in our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. And we are here back again with Jared Murphy, a critical thinker. Matter of fact, Jared, during the break, I was thinking to myself, literally, if indeed our civilization at one point then gets wiped out like one of these younger Dryas, events on the planet, it's going to be people, critical thinkers like yourself, I think, that will be our only hope to bring it back. I mean, guys like you and Tesla, guys that all of a sudden think outside the box, literally, I learned a long time ago that not everyone is equal when it comes to the gray matter between our ears. I mean, I'm a little dense sometimes, and I am constantly amazed at some people's ability to actually get beyond the problems that are presented to us.
I'm concerned about the amount of responsibility that may throw on my shoulders, but I need a crew, especially someone who can dig with a hat like that. We have to. It's always the posse. It's never one person.
Yeah.
We need the Borg.
Well, I'd be the guy with the whip. That's for sure. I could do that. Kind of keep everybody going there. But it is fascinating to me that. The planet obviously is much, much older than, or at least the ability for civilization to have rerouted itself many times is there. And of course, the forensics, show that as well. And then, of course, these out-of-place archaeological sites and and capabilities. And one thing I often thought about is that the actual archaeology points to these, like you said, the Baalbek, monuments that are so large and so amazingly crafted. But indeed, when you get to the actual civilizations that also were advanced, in other words, they thought that literally preserving one's body, back in the Egyptian days or whatever, was something that you had to do for the future, some reason. The idea of traveling across the gulf of whatever life would be, to the Osiris, rebirth and that kind of stuff. It's interesting to me that we kind of poo-poo those kinds of suggestions, but we definitely realize how advanced they were in certain other areas.
Yeah, there's dynastic peoples. I'm not saying that there are people in the last 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 years that were not creative thinkers, that weren't, in some ways, I think, socially, as the system shuts down. We have echoing remnants from the Bible and from the Hindu Vedas, where we have, or the Sumerian Kings list. So we have examples of humans, whether it's Noah and Methuselah. Ironically, old as Methuselah, the second oldest name in the Bible is actually Jared. He lived next to Methuselah. He lived almost 1,000 years. But you have the Sumerian Kings list with kings living 32,000 years. You literally have a list that says, not just, by the way, a list, multiple lists from around Sumer have been found that show, well, we have 8 pre-flood kings, and they lived for 32,000 years apiece. But then, similarly, post-flood, you have an example of, just like the biblical names, people started living less and less and less and less, like some energetic system that fueled, that connected with our genome was shutting down. And again, it could be allegory, it could be literal. You could take any of these, whether it's Hindu, the Vedas, or the Bible, taking them on what indicators they're showing. We're talking about every single story talking about how at one point people, or at least, in some cases, leadership, gods, kings. But on the other hand, normal people, they were living for these extended periods of time, and it was decrementing over time, but also in wisdom. We don't teach people to be wise. We teach people to memorize. And so the problem is, even the Greeks were identifying and telling Plato, like Solon, who Plato ultimately learned. Solon's the one who, the Greek philosopher, historian, Renaissance man, whatever you want to call him, he goes to Egypt. The Egyptians they're the ones who told him about Atlantis. He's the one who, through the ages, it got told to Plato. And here you are with this history where they say, look, we have dynastic Egypt goes back to 36,000 years. Sumer goes back pre-flood. You have these societies talking about, in their own words, we're wise, but we know that we're living in we're losing our sophistication. Yet the way they speak, the way they write, their stories are so much more sophisticated frequently than what we write today. So today we say we're 10 to 15% conscious. I don't think people stop to think about what that means at 10% or 12 or even at 15. Isn't that weird? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean I can barely put my pants on? Or does that mean the underwear goes on the inside? What does 10 to 15% consciousness look like now? What were the Greeks? What were the Romans? What was their, yes, brutal and dynastic, but also the Egyptians and again, the hairpin, the cultures in the East that we don't even recognize. There's megalithic construction in Japan. There's megalithic, yes, everybody likes to talk about the monuments that are off of Japan, but we have indications of polygonal masonry on Easter Island. So there's clearly a lost global society that was operating at a much higher, not just physical, but even in, again, how we choose to communicate and connect is through theater and song and music. But we think of it in terms of what we understand now, that, well, yeah, a dynastic people like the Greeks, well, they had instruments and they had concerts. You go to a concert, you hear it. They didn't have MP3 players. They were not doing it on phonographs. But then we don't think that further back, beyond the technology we're using now in solid-state hard drives, that there's a technology where the pineal gland and the actual earth around you could be the connecting points, or that the buildings themselves, you're not having to plug something in. That's just side note. But that these are sticking with the idea of we're not as advanced as we were. It's easy to even indicate when you're looking at, again, just the Greeks, just the Egyptians telling the Greeks, you people don't realize how young you are, but you're really an old people, but you've forgotten how old you really are, and that you are of an ancient and advanced people. And then, of course, some of this easily gets sidetracked into the idea of a single place on Earth where this advanced society reared its head, called Atlantis. And, you say that, you literally lose listeners. On the other hand, there are people who are super excited about the idea. I watched In Search Of. I heard Leonard Nimoy get me excited about it. Right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Matter of fact, it was just recently that I realized that, Atlantis could be in different places. What the idea that it could have been in Northwest Africa, rather than wherever we thought it was and stuff.
Yeah.
Those kinds of issues have fascinated me always as well. And the idea that Atlantis could potentially have been like a concentric ring kind of a city, with waterways and the whole thing. I had no clue about that, and whether that, kind of went in with their advanced planning on their society somehow. Why was a city built like that, if indeed it was?
Yeah, and the recot structure in North Africa, that Eye of Africa thing, I mean, that is an interesting. This is a structure that literally has the identical rings, irrelevant to how it's created through being a geological formation. It has the exact size rings. It's within and again, I have to credit Jimmy from Bright Insight. Man, that there's like a 3-part documentary on it, and I think he really nails it, because you have the Greeks having a world map that includes that part of Africa. Of the limited archaeological work that's been done there, because it's in such a high conflict area, it's not a safe place to be. There is saltwater indicators that those rings were filled with actual seawater. And the con against the recot structure in North Africa is that it's 7,800 feet in the air. Well, 7,800 feet in the air may not have been where it is with hydrostatic plate shifting. If it can go up, well, we have a city off the coast of Cuba that went down 2,300 feet. How hard is it for a city to go down 7,800 feet? We're playing with levels, and again, we look at the world in the past, and all we see is the map in our minds of the world. That's not what the world looked like. Even 4,000 years ago, if you look at Doggerland in just between Ireland, Scotland, and France, Doggerland, a significant portion of land was above water. Even 4,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, a really lot of it was. And way before Göbekli Tepe can even be brought up, Doggerland had completely existed when you started hitting the 8,000 to 9,000 year mark. And now we have all these mysterious standing stones, and a lot of them are fine. Again, they're all weathered at the top. When we say standing stone, we have to think about the actual large, finely polished square corners. The stones have turned into, they look like portable stalactites, or they just look weathered to hell. But it's not just Karnak, it's Skabray, it's the islands off of Scotland and Ireland and all of Great Britain, and all across the dolmens that we discussed that are from Montana through Eastern Europe and all over. There's just this massive, large, megalittically built, very weathering, ancient worldwide society that they're building the same stuff. It's either trending everywhere or not. They seemed better franchised than the average American mall system that has the same box retailers, blindfold you, take you anywhere in the country, and it's the same 8 stores in the same complex with all your favorite fast foods, and you're at home, no matter where you are. It's the same complex. Just it might just be always hot where you live, or it might be where I am, which is kind of cold. But I do think that the example or the idea, so I do think it's important to bring up the evolution of the ideas of Atlantis. And the reason is because, well, we have a direct story that says, well, there was a really advanced society. Okay. And then now we see this high advanced society all over the earth. Well, what if Atlantis represents the idea? Or is it Lemuria? Is it really a single place? Or is it here's a mind-blowing idea maybe, or maybe just at least an idea, that Atlantis is the last place that advanced ancient humans allowed the average surface survivor from these last Younger Dryas or other catastrophes. It was the last outpost or city that the average non-advanced human was allowed to see or experience. And so do we have it, like the recut structure, on a map? And is it close enough they were managing, or again, Viracocha, South American red-bearded, red-haired god, going around teaching them how to farm and how to, teaching them higher functions? So is it really just that we're talking about a single city, or are we talking about a society that muted itself because they had been away in these not rock-cut ruins, but underground, sophisticated, well-managed bunkers? They come out, the world's wiped out, they're mostly wiped out, and dynastic peoples, which at this point are just survivors of a great flood, have literally come across the remnants of whatever catastrophe happened, and they start rebuilding. There are indications of that all over Egypt, all over South America, all over Latin and Central America. You can't go to a temple in Mexico where you'll see a massive megalithic block and then a bunch of mud bricks. I do design build. I have been doing historical remodeling for over 20 years. You don't build like that. It's just any engineer, construction, structural engineer, architect, design, build, designer, general carpenter, anybody can look at this and go, you don't switch materials like that. You don't build giant cymatic polygonal blocks and then finish it with river rock.
Yeah.
Right? It's just...
Yeah. No, that would be absurd. Go ahead. And, the idea being that during that period of time, literally, there seems to have been these stutter steps. Do you call them? The idea being that, in reality, there was a connection, it seems to me, with some of these societies and their gods and their middle management, right, kings or whatever you want to call them. But there was a connection with the gods that doesn't seem to exist any longer. It's like all of a sudden, like, where did they go? All of a sudden we don't have that connection so much that they called it out, during those dynastic period, of the pyramids or whatever. Their gods seem to be very close to them, and evident.
Yeah, and we have those indications through. So a lot of the pieces we're tabling in as a society, we're not just entertained. I do think that we have hidden genetic memories. We have conscious ones. We describe them. We come at them differently through different techniques. Through sometimes it's I believe I had a past life, or it's a paranormal experience. These are not unrelated. These are all different. Everyone has different, I think, engaged or semi just under their consciousness, or just rearing through to consciousness abilities, and all of us have different ones. Wim Hof figured out this consciously controlling your immune system, and consciously controlling your inflammatory response, and also some very other interesting ideas and abilities that are too broad to discuss now. But then we have other abilities that, again, are they am I experiencing my own past life, or am I remembering because I'm part of this global human collective consciousness backup for all of human knowledge and all of human abilities? And is it that I'm just really fascinated by a particular famous person in the ancient past? Does that help with my ability to recall that person's life? Or through abilities that we think are just mere misfunctions like synesthesia or even gigantism or dwarfism or whatever the terminologies are they really handicaps or differences because they're, oh, well, that's not how people should be? What if it is? What if that person who was 8 feet tall was really supposed to be 12? But we don't have the activation point for the gene. We don't understand the mutation, not because it's a mutation, but because, oh, this person is supposed to be this with 6 fingers. They're not alien. They had a function, and they ran the machine with 6 fingers. Only they got, we get 5. So at the same time, then, you have these legends, stories, and myths, different societies, and we're tabling those ideas. But then simultaneously, and this is why I think the UFO and what we're seeing, and people paying attention to it, again, like these other fields, as we, again, understand more about quantum computing and nanobots and programming genes, not the alchemy, not puppy dog tails and dragon's feet and fill in the blank magical potion. That's alchemy. The human genome is a completely, like all other organic systems, completely programmable in a completely in an architecture that is astoundingly complex, but still a programmable system that was designed. Even people who are pragmatic and very scientific look at the human genome and go, how can this not be, it's designed, right? But these are all indicators that we have different thoughts and processes that bring us to this ability of who and what are we. And by looking at now these current interactions we have with UFOs and the eyewitness accounts that are not military, these are UFOs, are these those people that have backed away from Atlantis, that have backed away from public viewing, but at the same time they interact with us, and this is where it's not aliens worse, it's us. The idea is, why is it worse? Well, if they really are our great ancestors and they can't directly help us, but then you look at the weird hidden state, are they communicating with a certain group? Are they not? Is that really a true statement? It's kind of like Rick and Morty, if you're a fan. One of my favorite episodes is, he has a car battery that's really a mini universe, and all it does is power his car, and he tells Morty, well, we got to go and fix the battery. What he really means is zoom into a literal mini universe, and he goes, look, these people think we're aliens, so put on these antenna, and ooh, we're an alien. And in reality, that's all it is. So when they show up and see us, is it worse because they're not really trying to help us, but they're still experimenting, or they're still like, well, we feel bad, we left them on the surface for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 50,000 years, while we went and survived. Some of our even relatives were on the surface. Is it the Paracas elongated skull people of Peru? Is there a whole class of humanity that got left in the dredges and remnants of a cataclysm or a weaponized disaster or both? And do they feel guilty or bad? And are they looking at us going, no, we're not going to help them. Remember, Bill, the last time you gave them a religion, they killed like 50 million people. Don't do that. Good. They're like, that's...
Good point. I like that caveat there. Oh, my goodness. This show is just flying by. I tell you what, we're having a great time tonight. And we're going to be right back after our break here. Again, we got to take a break at the bottom of the hour. So hang on, folks. We'll be right back with more Spaced Out Sunday and Jared Murphy after this.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is a place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Resnick, founder of the Tribe of Cheers. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for ridiculous causes. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor of Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Fall. I have to tell you, I love the response I get. The little brother is watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring. Even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because Spaced Out Radio, you know the little brother is watching.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a Space Traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for something new to push your limits? Look beyond the spectrum. A new docu-series featuring some of the best researchers in the world when it comes to everything from UFOs, government cover-ups, and strange humanoids. Truth Seekers, Stephen Bassett, Jeff Meldrum, Jack Casher, and Stan Friedman, among others, all chip in to bring their knowledge to you. Beyond the Spectrum can be found on Amazon as well as Tubi TV. Tell us what you think on our Amazon page.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotion and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
That's SpacedOutRadio.com. We are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at SpacedOutRadio.com today.
Hello everyone. This is Ryan Stacey from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as HESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on SOR Sightline Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out the Sightline Report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday, right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey.
And I'm John. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best at paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturday, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come on up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
I'm feeling a little spicy. see tonight. What to do.
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units, pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce comes in 3 flavors. The burning bumble, tone it down a bit bumblicious, and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajanos.com.
And we are back with Jared Murphy. And Jared, I got to thinking, how does the giants and the skeletons of 35-foot people, supposedly, in Minnesota they're finding giants, aren't they? In these mounds sometimes?
Yeah, I actually don't live very far from a city called, a lot of people don't know this, but it's Mound, Minnesota.
Really?
And the reason it's Mound, Minnesota is because it was nothing but burial mounds. And just like Wisconsin, and there's always the same players, and it's called the Smithsonian, showing up to make sure that Manifest Destiny is maintained, that, America was was God-given to not everyone who is already here. And any narrative, it's literally written, I do talk about this in the book, it was literally a stated actual manifest within the organization. Any history that does not, and to paraphrase, it said, any history that does not show the Native American as a complete savage will not be admitted as history. The facts on the ground will not be admitted based on they didn't want anything that didn't show Manifest Destiny as being correct. So you have pyramid structures in Illinois and all over. We have the largest earthwork in the world, Serpent's Mound. And we have other ones that are also, again, we have dolmens that are maybe tens of thousands of years old. And there are many locations of underground, not large caves that are natural, but rock cut. Again, we have underground structures that make no sense, they look like they're just caves, but they're not. And so now the giants, like Mound, Minnesota, we had, again, reports of large skeletal structures being found. And again, by giant, 10 foot, 12 foot, 14 foot, 18 feet. You have different, and there have been bones found that you got to wonder, okay, how tall could people be? And we have references of this in the Bible. We have references of this in every culture around the world. So is it impossible to have a really tall person? No, not at all. It's a matter of programming. What would be the function? The Mountain, the actor that played the Mountain in Game of Thrones, just squatted just the last 8 months a world record. It's ridiculous. It's over like 11 or 1,200 pounds. It was incredible. What could a really fit 12-foot tall person squat? So then we think, if a whole bunch of giants were around, if each one of them could move 3,000 pounds or 2,500 pounds, how many giants would it take to move, a 1,200-ton trilithon? It would still take a lot. But that's the idea, is that, if giants were around, and then we have all these stories and legends of little people, like the Moonite people. If you want to look up a great story, Mary Joyce writes on the little people, the Cherokee little people. They were little people or Moonite people, not because they had big eyes, but because they didn't like, even if the moon was out and it was too bright, they didn't even like the moon. And this is a story that goes to southwestern Indians all the way to Cherokee and other native peoples near the Appalachia. And we had graves. Again, in comes the Smithsonian. There were graves reported in the early 1800s, I'm talking like pre-1814, of over 100,000 little people graves. So, and then there's tunnels that were found well-documented tunnels that the universities in the area had no interest in excavating. They wanted to build new stuff for the university, but these were little tunnels that would have been perfect for little people. And then we have, if you want to have some giggles or fun, like look at megaliths around the world and look up elf castles. And there's all these ruins that only fit tiny people. And then there's the ruins that are, off of Google Earth, off of the coast of California, that show a structure that's possibly 4 miles long with 600-foot pillars. So what is that? Is that where giants hang out? Or is it that we could easily manipulate our genes to exist at the size we need for the not moving a bunch of heavy stones? That's not what I'm saying. But I don't think it was an issue whether you wanted to be short or tall. And this is well discussed as we come to an age where we understand nanotechnology. We understand that programming a gene, programming a cell is well discussed. I think for you to go from 0 to 100 on this is Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near. The guy holds over 200 patents. He's basically a modern Leonardo da Vinci. He writes a book that they consider being one of the most important books written in the last couple of millennia. And it really just surmises nanotechnology. And mind you, the book is very relevant, and it was done in 2008. And what is relevant about it is that he's describing the technology of Wi-Fi enabled nanobots, nano factories that create nanobots that are out of 80 to 150 atoms. We were doing that by 2008. So you got to get your head around when we look at this stuff and we go, yeah, I heard a story about aliens traveled interdimensionally, fill in the blank, from another part of the galaxy because they didn't know how to control the atom and they needed to physically dig up gold. Think about that. They had to physically dig. They had the technology to get through the whole problem of faster than light travel, but they didn't know how to use an organic or atomic 3D printer to just take any two pieces of whatever. We're doing that now. It's called spintronics. In fact, James, I'm blanking on the guy who even thought of an electron, theorized it. It's really a measurement of draw in reference to what we really know about it. It's a theoretical particle, but the point is spintronics is based on the idea of electron has a spin, and that we have technology built around it where in 2008 we had the ability to construct machines that built machines that are 80 to 150 atoms in size. So we should think about that, and we think, okay, well, how complex is the human body? Well, Ray Kurzweil points out that you could replace every cell, you and I, in a year, if we meet physically, every cell in your body's been replaced. Every cell. So you're not the same person that you were a year ago or even 6 months ago. There's so many things that you're being replaced with, and therein lies the issue. What is human? What is being human? And who thought we'd be this existential, right, in the last 20 minutes? But the idea is that you could program 6 cells to be replaced with a diamondoid crystalloid, like I want stronger cells, or I want to be shorter, or I want to be taller. I would like to be a giant. I would like to be a little person. I would like to be white, translucent, with big eyeballs because I can see infrared better that way, and I'm more connected to my organic craft that has no wings and isn't a magnetic energy frequency based machine. And so we really are we are not just disconnected. I was going to say disconnected. We just aren't or weren't. The narrative isn't there yet, even though the knowledge is out there and the sciences are there. We don't totally, as a people, understand the complexity of nanotechnology, and that to the smallest level we are controlling an atom, and have been now. We've gone from like barely understanding quantum physics. I mean, really barely, even when Schrodinger and Planck and everybody was discussing it 100 plus years ago to where we are now, the idea of manipulating, again, not just manipulate, that's the thing. We even have it in our paradigm that our genome is something that was a natural random event. That it wasn't, I know some people like to go on the idea of it being structured and planned, but even my narrative, I was about to just say it naturally, just that, oh, well, we can program genes, with the assumption that, oh, it's a random thing, that it wasn't engineered, that it wasn't planned even to begin with. We think, oh yeah, there was a period in the last 4 billion years where everything was just random, it just sort of happened, and now we know how to manipulate them. We aren't taking into account that, how do you get a chicken before an egg? It's an age-old question. It's simple. You 3D print a creature that lays eggs. You program for a egg-laying creature. That's how you get an egg-laying creature. It's a dormant technology. It's real simple. It doesn't sound like it, but the reality is that we are dealing with these sightings, and we are seeing clearly that there is very advanced ruins, and there is very advanced math, there's very advanced genetics, and here we are being able to document these interactions with highly advanced craft, and it's very natural for us to go, well, they're not from here, because, man, if it was my great-great-grandfather, I think he would, help me out. And there are other people who might say, I hated my grandpa, he was a workaholic and really hard on me, and he was from the, he was practically from the Civil War. He was mean as hell. And some people would say that. And so maybe there's a reason that they don't help us. And I joked before the break that it was because, the last time you helped us, they killed 50 million people and they started worshiping you, Bill. And it's like, don't let him do a suggestion again. And then, it's like every night, I couldn't, there's so many aspects of this to get your head around. Like, one is we assume that a group of people, as in, they were like, crap, we all made it, so we're one group. We're not even thinking of them as fractional. Now, we have narratives that we're building that are based entirely out of nothing about who those factions are. I'm suggesting simply that in our legends, myths, and stories, some of those factions may have outed themselves, but it's still, it'd be no different than looking at our globe now. There are different races of humans. It would be the same for our advanced ancestors. There's a reason and there's a purpose to, I think, the complexities of why we're all different. I grew up like everyone, believing, oh yeah, everybody came from Africa, and it just took a long time, and with a mutation, that person's Asian, this person's this particular kind of native brand of human, and, that's it, it's just random. But what if it was intentional? What if it was for backups? What if it was for functionality? What if it was for just literally choice customization? And now those mods don't make any sense, and we make hide nor tail of it. So these are all the things I think we have to dialogue about, that I think with everyone else kind of taking it, again, it's physical objects you can find, it's things you might describe. You might not be as interested in UFOs, but you might be interested in paranormal or ghost. And your ability to project outside of your body, your ability to really reactivate this great awakening, like you described it earlier, is it possible that what we're doing is we've been really just like rubbing our feet across the staticky floor, and we get a shock and we don't get the technology of static electricity? But we could be doing the same thing with our other abilities, that we're just, some of us are experiencing like we're giving ourselves a shock, and we're experiencing an aspect of a technology that is, again, just barely conscious, just reaching through the surface, but it's not what we are describing it in our own terms right now. It's maybe not paranormal. It may not be a miracle. It may not be your past life. You are accessing a complex system that is not, and 100%, it's not just internal. We know that there's a vibrational medicine is real. Vibrational, the existence of, we are energy. There's not, to quote Ken Wheeler, we are not the cult of bumping particles. There's not a duality. I just don't see the duality of particles versus energy and waves and frequencies. What constitutes each human body and individual items is not to be underestimated. The reality is that we are vibrational frequency machines. There's an aura around all of us, around everything in the universe, and the tuning of that, it's not a woo-woo thing. There is an actual the frequencies that each of us emit from our thoughts, our ideas, our dreams, the actual aura around all living and even unborn items. This is something that Burr did in the 1940s, that he established that an unfertilized egg or a seed that hasn't been asked to grow has a magnetic signature that looks like the adult plant or the adult person, or the adult, in that case, experimented with salamanders, but other things, that our electromagnetic signature is identical, even unfertilized. The universe knows what we're going to be and look like. I mean, there's a lot to unpack that. How far do you want to go down the rabbit hole? Which pill do you want at this point?
You know, Jared, this is what I feel like when I always have you on the show. I feel like, you know, the relay race where they have 4 guys, and there's the third guy that literally hands off the baton to the fastest guy on the team, and literally that third guy has a really hard time keeping up fast enough to get it to that fast guy. And my mind is always racing when I listen to you, so this is a real treat for me. And I am about ready to pass the baton on for you for the last final aspect of the show, so you can like buzz around the track and, you know, get across the finish line here. But you know, it's fascinating to me the fact that you literally are talking about the idea that consciousness seems to be connected somehow with everything. Do you have a feeling at all that there seems to be a new thing happening on the planet? Is this just same old, or have you heard about the idea that maybe we're all getting to the 100th monkey syndrome and somehow we're all rising together uniquely at this point?
I think that the shortest answer, one of the shortest answers Jared's about to give, kind of, is that there are a couple things out there that this relates to. One is the idea that we could lose a percentage of our population, that we're overpopulated, just based on ancient engineered soil alone and structures like the Guatemalan LiDAR scans. But the engineered soil that's all over the earth, the amount of megalithic structures shows that there was a worldwide society that was larger than the society that's on Earth now. And I do believe the example I like to give is Leonardo da Vinci, brilliant man, super brilliant on a million levels. But when he thought of his inventions, he thought of within his range of ideas, as in a flying machine would be made of wood. He didn't imagine plastic. He didn't imagine nanospintronics and graphene conductors and solid-state memory hard drives. And on one hand, pragmatically, you can say, well, when a few people think of a couple things, someone else can build on each one of those ideas. I think that that's, of course, part of it. But the other part of being conscious as a collective and being a magnetic frequency-based vibrational, literally vibrational universe, not in a woo-woo way, in a real hard science way. We are matter and energy. And when you have 8 billion people, what we're on the precipice of, for all of those who don't, again, it's cliche to say you don't, well, every life is precious. I don't think people can stress that enough. One, is it unique to be alive in the universe? We know that's true. But what I think people who are really think they're smart and think they're at the top or the elite, here's the thing that they need to consider. The guy that they think is worthless and banging the rocks in the jungle is part of a collective human consciousness that is providing an uncurrently described RAM, a collective consciousness that is on a subconscious level currently, I think, helping prop up our 10 to 15% as I think there's some of us going beyond that 10 to 15%, or that even if you're at 10, just growing a couple of percentages. So it's not just that you're going beyond 15% consciousness, but that's what's driving these abilities and this awakening, is the collective energy of the human spirit. It's not a half full thing. It's a actual part of this harmonic of irrelevant if we're not all singing the same choir and doing the same prayer or doing the same religion or the same secret whatever or super secret yoga system. That's not what's mattering. But what is, though, is the quickening, I think, is that total collective. Part of it is the total collective human existence. It's that total collective consciousness that we're tapping into consciously and unconsciously. And then along with that, there is, I think then, because we are so on the, we're not where we were once. So unfortunately for us, everything we're doing is really a rediscovery. And I do wonder if there is that, if it's not aliens, worse, it's us. I wonder if there is a group of highly superconscious, still here humans that every now and then look at us and they go, well, they're kind of banging at our old technology and we want them to be there, but I wonder if they themselves overthink it. How does it apply when they interact and you hear about abductions and you hear about interactions that are either violent or not friendly with UFOs, or even if they are, the question is, are they doing this because they know they've made mistakes in the past, and are they doing it to manipulate us to keep us suppressed? Maybe it has nothing to do with other power structures. But there's a future where do we physically connect without Wi-Fi? Yeah. Is there a future where we can see, sense, and touch each other in a way that we can't do with a cell phone? Yes, absolutely. But it's a rediscovery of lost abilities.
Yeah, that seems to be. And indeed, you're talking, I remember Admiral Byrd's lost diary. And the stories that he told in that diary of running across this advanced civilization, in, I think it was the North Pole when he went up there. And literally, this was the civilization that lived under the planet, that kind of thing. You wonder how they kept themselves separate from us and why they did, and then indeed, why would they interact with a guy like Admiral Byrd at that time? This was in I believe it was the 50s.
47 or 49?
Yeah, I think it could have been the 40s. The reason I remember that is his son, Admiral Byrd's son, literally was one of the officers in Project Blue Book and told about his father's lost diary. And I remember reading that. It's fascinating stuff. Listen, my mind is still spinning. We're going to take our break here at the top of the hour, and
sure,
we're gonna come back. Is it the top or is it the bottom? Okay, I've lost track already. Yeah, we got one more to go here. So we're going to take our break, and we're going to come right back with more of Space Sunday after this. And oh my word, I'm just thoroughly enjoying sitting back and listening to what we've got going here. With our good buddy Jared Murphy, and the thinking process that we're all having to do here to kind of stretch ourselves into reality, I think. Let's do that, and we'll be right back.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Resnick, founder of the Chive Kids. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money from random causes. Our donor dollars go directly to life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor of Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightline report. We are independent, and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightline report.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of the day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I'm bringing you the Woo every Monday through Friday on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going all out to bring you the strangest, oddest stories and subjects I can find for your entertainment. Why? Because when we hit Geek Woo, I know I've done my job. So come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com, 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, and together, my friends, we own the night.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot Hot Sauce.
Your Bumblefoot Hot Sauce today. The sauce, Bumblelicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit. Bumble, we're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby. And tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot Hot Sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune into SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hi, this is Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together, we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend. Woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Sunday. I am your host, Michael W. Hall. Thanks for being with us. We welcome back everyone on our terrestrial affiliates, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, and UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans, Louisiana. On the digital side, we're on Revolutionary Radio, and don't forget you can check us out, our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us all a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on the Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. And oh my word, we are flying through this show here with Jared Murphy, and we have talked a little bit about everything as far as inappropriate archaeology and the idea that the human condition on the planet seems to be maybe in a retrograde currently. Let's kind of put it that way. It's been fascinating to me that even in everything that seems to have been, in any civilization we've ever heard of, they've always had the idea of ghosts, haven't they? The idea that there are kind of beings or some kind of a consciousness that literally either survives death or has something to do with somebody's life that people have always kind of talked about in societies. How do what is your understanding of that idea of the ghosts theory of civilization, of humanoids, and what do they mean by that throughout history?
I think one of the abilities of the things that we have, one of the things that has been pointed out is that when we're trying to deal with either a trauma or a conflict, even externally, think of the classic married couple fighting with the kids listening, and it doesn't get resolved. And a lot of times I do think that if we're not, as an energetic being, is it theoretically possible to externalize that conflict or externalize that violent or sad finish of something? And one of this has come up before, and the idea that even if you leave a home, why is there still a ghost or something? Or frequently it's, the question is, well, if there's aliens or if there's ancient humans, how come we only see Victorian ghosts? Or how come we only see something that's more recent in the last couple hundred years? And I think a lot of that has to do with the direct actual genetic lineage connection with the more recent past, is that it's I think we're a lot more present with our recent past. And what I mean by that is that it's more, I'm going to say the words more relevant. I'm not saying it's more relevant, but it's more relevant to our current existence. And I think that those problems hang in the ether, if you want to call it ether, or in the collective consciousness. They're maintained and they have structure, and it manifests as what appears to be a ghost or something violent or happy or positive. And I know a lot of people like to get biblical or go down the demon road and stuff like that. The problem is that even not biblical, even Sumerian, there's, again, anything post Diluvian has their flood myths, has their ideas of demons, angels, gods, etc. And what happens is that we tend to label things within a framework that we understand. So whether we're saying paranormal, ghost, etc., we're also referring to these are the words we're using. But in a world of a highly advanced frequency energy based human that is moving, levitating 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 ton blocks, but connecting the planet, managing the ionosphere, having a network, a power plant system like Christopher Dunn maybe described in, it did describe, but maybe that the pyramid system that are the Nazca lines, the Jordan lines that are like Nazca, the Bolivian Nazca lines, which again just describe these, what appear to be Earth circuits, that it's an entire connected system. So maybe, if we're geeking out a little bit, despite all the different layers of Earth that have built up over this engineered soil that has these piezoelectric properties, perhaps when we walk barefoot and we have the observation, well, there's an electron discharge, and then we are part of a collective consciousness. So what happens when you have a super violent end or a super unresolved issue? Is there a point where if you don't manage it personally, it gets held in the ether by the collective consciousness and it manifests as a ghost?
Good point. Yeah, I like that. It it kind of explains a little bit about why we think, for instance, even the oral, the smells and stuff. People will say that they swear they smelled their grandfather's cigar. In the room, the same room. It just kind of comes in and goes out, and those kinds of things. That kind of shows that we've got different kinds of abilities to kind of witness things around us that we don't normally use. I think a lot as well. That's fascinating stuff.
So there's scientists to back it up. There are scientists that discovered that they could store information on the human DNA by using the genome code as ones and zeros. So 12 years ago, two Harvard scientists record a 50,000 word book. Then today, here we are, fast forward, they can do over a terabyte of information on DNA, on a gram. A gram of DNA can hold a terabyte plus. Now that means that all human knowledge, right down to those casting, dyes, metallurgy, electronics, medicine, you name it, everything in human history that we know of could be stored in basically 2 elephants in a nutshell. And now that doesn't affect the elephant being an elephant. So there's the thing to think about. When I say collective consciousness, or when we tap in and, in a past life I was Cleopatra, you're never ever the guy that was at the zoo cleaning giraffes. You were never that guy. Some people were that guy in those regressive. I like some of the extensive alternative therapies where you're dealing with those traumas and stuff like that might be generational. And again, there lies a sliver of the truth. It's like you think Old Testament, the sins of the father will go on 7 generations. What if that's just a slight sliver of memory that it goes generationally? Because what we also found scientifically in this exact example was that trauma could be passed from, they were studying worms in this case, that the trauma or life experience of the mom could be passed to the child. And we were able to identify exactly where and how that was stored. So things that we consider instinct now, like why do we all on occasion run faster and faster and faster up a basement staircase? Why is that? And then we have rock-cut ruins all over the earth. And how long do we really need to be worried about running up dark, dirty basement staircases? What is that echoing memory of? So when it's someone genetically related to us, like a grandparent or someone like you said, I remember their cigar. This ties in this synesthesia. Again, these are abilities where your 5 senses are mixed. You could see a color and taste or smell something. It can be mixed up where you hear a number and it's spatially sequenced. So somebody said to you, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5 would be far away, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the 1 could be right in front of you, literally in your mind's eye. So some people have described having like almost a whiteboard. So between colors, sounds, making fireworks type displays in front of your face. So if you could think of those abilities with the idea that your memories aren't just yours, they are not only your parents or your grandparents, but they're living memories. And their consciousness And although we're 10 to 15%, what if those full abilities include that connectivity? So astral projecting or projecting a dead relative might not just be you creating their memory for an amusement. What if that ability to store genetic memory is also consciousness? If every cell in your body is new within a year, max, where is your consciousness? And then people think, well, that's your soul, and it's separate. But, okay, so is it something that has to go into the ether, or is the ether that collective consciousness, and is the embodiment of that, the stored total RAM of that, the collective human species? So the person you're just counting in the forest, you think isn't important for the super elite, you might want to consider, with your 10 to 15% consciousness, that person that you think doesn't need to be on the planet because we're overpopulated, in reality we're underpopulated, and that very unimportant tribe happens to be the collective consciousness holding what's going to be the backup to your future grandkid. Something to consider.
I like that.
Before you just... Yeah, and I think that the ghost idea, again, it ties on the door of, I call it the blinky box. You bang on the left side, you get orange. You bang on the right side, you get red. And then someone comes along 1,000 years later as you've been doing the ritual and says, that's the control panel to a 747, and you're sitting in a plane. And of course, somebody immediately yells, heretic, burn him. And so because we have lost some of the identifications genetically of this technology, that we can literally store terabytes of information, we assume that it's not already naturally, but naturally, that the technology that we're already backing ourselves up, we're already collectively communicating, but we're muted to it, or we're not conscious of it, or we're projecting, but we don't understand what we're projecting. So when somebody sees a ghost, for instance, just as a sidebar, that sticks around, a sidebar for you, lawyer, I use a legal term. So if we get a ghost that doesn't leave an area that seems violent, or a particular family or a particular situation, what if it's more that paranormal experience is actually an embodiment of an argument, conversation, a dissection that is specifically for the people involved, but because they're gone, they're not that entity, or what that embodiment of that issue isn't hanging around because it's really attached to the house. It was attached to the exact situation that happened there, and it's not going to leave until it's resolved, assuming that the people who are involved will resolve it, but they're not. They're gone. So, but it's being propped by the ether. But that's just a side note to this collective consciousness that we're re-engineering through these abilities to say, okay, I'm going to take... We did, in 2008, we had already created... I talked to you about atoms. I've actually never readdressed this on air. This is new. I've actually never discussed this with anybody, at least in shows. It's the fact that we were able to take 18 hydrogen atoms and make kind of a decent map of the world. Literally a world map shows all the countries. Well, not more like a Greek sort of looking map. But they did it with 18 hydrogen atoms. Okay, and I don't think we understand how small that is, and the fact that they were able to efficiently compact the entire, like zip file it. They were able to compress the information into basically 18 atoms, and it's just not We're just not comprehending the level of technology that we are now at. And then when we look to this ancient past, we have a constant reminder. We have things that we describe as paranormal, and we have things that we describe as past life. And yet we also have these UFOs that keep showing up. And they keep interfering. They've interfered. I mean, you've gone on. I mean, I don't need to repeat all the ways that they've interacted with us. But why? And is it, again, we're the biggest, most interesting anthropological study in the galaxy? Possible. Oh, my publisher seems to think so sometimes. I like that. Look, I like Olaf's theory. He actually has a background for this. I mean, he is he was trained as an archaeologist and understands anthropology. And I'm not saying that me as an alien wouldn't want to come here and watch us eat, have babies and die. I mean, maybe it's really fascinating. But at the same time, I do think that there's a portion of this planet, based on the level of technology we got to, and now that we're like the technologies we just discussed, I don't think they're new, because we just have a level of technology and polygonal cymatic construction that is too advanced. Wim Hof and those techniques are too advanced. Synesthesia and gigantism and the little people, everything we're pointing out, it's too technical for what we're seeing. And we're constantly, again, every year we're discovering thousands of living creatures. It was just last summer that we discovered an organism that does not breathe oxygen. I mean, we found our first living organism deep underwater that does not breathe air. That's an entirely different conscious creature that we are now able to account for. That why would there not be other living entities like that? Again, part of our narrative is to say, well, it's random. It's they just particles bumped together and randomly came up with life. That's a possibility that in not all situations did it do that. But if we were going along this conversation and saying, okay, the planet was engineered and terraformed, the frequencies were tuned in, large machines that some, not like the Great Pyramids and all the pyramids all over the earth, maybe some of these structures, again, man-made, but they've dusted and rusted away, and they were made of metal or other types of materials. But at one point they managed the ionosphere. We balanced and tuned everything, and we had a very large, functioning, interlocked, gridded, organic computer system. We aren't also accounting for the fact that those systems have run amok. We're in safe mode, but the broken systems didn't stop being here. These organisms and these things are still functioning. They're still running. As in, look, there's trees outside. Well, trees are nature. Trees are natural. Well, all the forests used to be sequoias and redwoods, and they weren't 50 or 100 feet tall. They were 380, like Hyperion. Hyperion is a redwood that's over 60 plus feet in diameter. It's 379 feet tall. And we didn't find it until 2008. And I know we've talked about it before, but imagine forests for a society that can lift 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 ton blocks, lift them and move them either hundreds or thousands of miles, and also vertically, like at Tiwanaku, up to 13,000, 14,000 feet. And they were able to do it and shape it in ways that we don't even have the comprehension for the tools. How hard would it be for that society to work with a 380-foot tree? How hard would it be for them to fell that, to shape it with woodwork that is beyond our comprehension, with the cutting tools that would be complementary to wood as they were to stone? We don't even put that on the table. If that's enough of a digression for you, what do you think?
Oh, I love that. That's fascinating to me. Yeah, you're right.
Could put. Go ahead.
How many people have told you look just like Nicolas Cage?
Shh! Don't bring it up on it.
I'm sorry if I outed you here, but I'll tell you what. You're a better looking Nicolas Cage. Let me put it that way.
Don't tell him that. I like Nicolas Cage, but it's like at this point, all I can do is, hey, we need someone to blow up really quick. Can you be a stunt double? I think that's. Yeah. I know he does a lot of his stuff, but I could qualify, I think, as maybe a cousin or a brother or something. Like, I think we look similar. A lot of people say it's from the eyes up, but ironically, I never really saw it. I just.
It's probably hard to see it yourself. It's just that when you deal with personalities and things, and you have the ability. I mean, he is quite an interesting character himself. He's very good at delivering his lines. He's erudite himself, and you kind of give off that aura as well.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, then in the movie version of me, and it won't be the Lost City of Z, I don't want to end up in a jungle and disappear.
There you go.
I want to be in the one that I come back out of.
Yeah.
And and again, it's not as interesting for some people, but that whole engineered soil thing, and I know we've touched on it, but one of the things I didn't bring up about it, and again, having a background in construction and remodeling, what's important to me about it is it's under the giant polygonal walls. So you have to create, when you build a home like in where I am, I'm in Minnesota, and we have basements, and basements have footings, and footings are supposed to be pre-compacted to 90%. What does that mean? Well, we're on clay, we're on a large piece of bedrock, but there's clay, there's sand, there's a lot of black dirt, ancient old black dirt that are more described as Chernozems, but again, it's a biochar. But the thing is, we pre-compact the soil. It's supposed to be 90. It never really is. And you go in a home that's 120 years old, and the floors are like they're literally, guess which way the marble's going to go if you put them down. And so they don't last 120 years. So let's just say all polygonal masonry is dynastic and only 5,000 to 6,000 years old. How the hell are those millions and millions of tons of one single wall at Sacsayhuaman or Ollantaytambo? How are they? Or even the Great Pyramid, how are they staying square and level? And, well, it has to do with the foundational material. And I've talked to some archaeologists about this, and they're like, Jared, nobody's checking this. Because, again, art history is what archaeology was. It was find a cool statue or something to put on my mantle on my 1700s fireplace. Archaeology wasn't let's figure out an ancient society. It was art history. It was find something that would be cool in my Victorian garden. And then it became about the history. But the thing that is you're looking for mummies, you're looking for artifacts of coinage, you're looking for interesting things, or the Rosetta Stone. You're not going, boy, there's a giant polygonal wall here. I wonder what they pre-compacted the soil with. What's the material made out of? Is it piezoelectric? Is it a seismic metastructure, which is anything from nano-size to large things that are shaped to help cancel earthquakes, or would it be for communication purposes? So at the polygonal level, there's something called keystone cuts, and where there'll be two rocks that are perfectly cut together. They'll take a little section out and they'll pour a metal connection. These blocks are not going anywhere from 20, 50, 100, 800, 1,000 tons. They're not going anywhere, not to mention they're cut and they perfectly fit together on every side. And so now they have this extra metal piece. It's not for movement. It's for electrical connectivity. But what's in the soil then? If you have piezoelectric in the Terra Preta, under the structures themselves, do they have a 40-foot pre-compacted building or at Sacsayhuaman or at Ollantaytambo? Are those 12 or 15-foot megalithic blocks being held on a foundation of, is it 100? Is it 110? Do we think it's a rock? In reality, it's pre-compacted material. Is it multiple layers? Just like the blocks on some of these buildings that came from 500 to 1,000 miles away. Are some of this material like, oh wow, they crushed up a particular quartzite for, it looked like the raw material was 5 feet thick and they compacted it down to a layer that was incredibly dense. It looks like it's a set stone, but it's not. Or, you know what I mean? So there's this complexity to the engineered soil that is under the foundational structures of every megalithic platform. So for every archaeologist, and I'm planning this myself, but I'm throwing it down out there for everyone right now. It's our history. All of us have to be ready to be wrong. All of us need to participate and help. Everyone listening can participate through their own hunches and instincts, shared memories, genetic memories. I don't just mean genetic memories are past memories of someone else, but they're also collective consciousness tap-ins. So when I say genetic memory, your gene expression and how you work out your diet, your meditative processes, all that and your experiences give you instincts and insights into not just your past or someone else's, but present. So think genetic memory is part of that awareness of maybe not, hey, don't go on that plane, it's going to crash sort of thing, but I'm not saying it's telling you the future, but it's part of that collective consciousness. So for everyone out there digging, knowing what these foundational structures are is something that, yeah, there are places like Tiwanaku where they've been rolled over with mud, where it's like clearly something bad happened here, and they're not even digging that part up, but there are all these platforms and structures there's no hiding it. There's going to be no mummies. It's not sexy. There's no jewels. But you're talking about doing core sampling as deep as we have to go and as far as away from the building to see what the soil differences are, to see how, I think, engineered these buildings are. We have to stop marveling at what we're seeing above the ground and start looking at what's going on. Excuse me. Yeah, so
I think that's important. That's something that you've kind of hit on that's been fascinating to me, engineered soil that needs to be looked at as well. We've got one more segment to go here, Jared. We're going to be right back with more of Jared Murphy after this.
Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday, right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best in paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturday, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumble Hot?
4 million Scoville units, pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce is coming in 3 flavors. The burning bubble, 20-pound bit bubblicious, and throw the sauce over everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajanos.com.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is driven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a Space Traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
You want a new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between. Great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Price is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Are you addicted to the woo? Good. Me too. This is Dave Scott, and you can woo it up with me every Monday through Friday, starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, for 3 hours of great entertainment in the subjects you love. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, intuition. Yes, we hit it all 5 days a week. Look for us at spacedoutradio.com. We're together, my friends. We own the night.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Hello everyone. This is Ryan Stacey from the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as HESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightline Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out the Sightline Report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Hey, Spaced Out Radio fans! It's John Resnick, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grand item, ranging from dance and therapy programs to prosthetic limbs to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Fall. I have to tell you, I love the response I get from Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make you think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening because Spaced Out Radio, you know that Little Brother is watching.
From the heart of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the mighty moose beard oil. All our oils and balms are handmade, 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your mighty moose beard oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey in some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
And we are back with Spaced Out Sunday and Jared Murphy. You know, Jared, we've got one. This is our final segment here, and I think I've been remiss in allowing people to realize where they can get your books and your materials. We want to make sure we do that right now before we get any farther. Tell people how they can get a hold of your materials.
Well, you can get a signed copy of my book from me if you go to notaliens.com. Please email if you are out of country. I sign you a book, and I actually have to go to the post office, and if you are out of country, it is a significantly different expense. But it's different. Of course, you can go to Amazon and get a book, and it goes right to you in a couple days. It's entirely different than getting something from me. But that's notaliens.com. Episodes like our episode, I'll have a link there when you provide one. I always want people to catch me on shows. If they missed it tonight, I want them to connect to you. And so I'll always have that on the main page. And, of course, up-and-coming events, they'll be there, too. And Amazon. And, yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It just promotes for... I do segments. I do interviews also that I... collect, and we'll just do a preview there. But there's a member area at Not Aliens, and same deal, exclusive interviews and other content from sites and stuff I'm planning. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty fun. It pretty much costs you a latte a month.
Nice.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's quite reasonable for sure. How do people respond to you when you when they come across that title? Hey, it's not aliens. It's worse.
Yeah,
it could be us. What do you normally get when people respond to that initially? You know, in this whole time when people are like talking aliens right and left, you know, and you're kind of making them pause for a moment and think twice.
Well, yeah, I did think about. I thought about more when I was writing the book, and I'm thinking, great, I'm gonna go at the Vatican. I'm gonna go at not that there aren't UFOs, but great, I'm gonna piss off everyone. That's what I was thinking.
That'll do it, for sure. It's like you know, standing up to the whole idea that wait a minute, maybe it's us. Yeah.
Well, and there's the thing. It's not that they're not highly advanced. It's not that they're not foreign to us now. The issue is, are their origins really from somewhere else? And then we forget the fact that if we've achieved, again, there's a lot of aspects and sides to this. if we achieved a high level of technology in the past, we, in 100 years, from the Industrial Revolution, if you want to argue about the starting point on the cotton gin or whatever, the reality is we got to the moon. And if we got to the moon in a short amount of time, what could a society who could do and build what they did, how far with their nanotechnology, how far could they have gotten? How far with their genetic and their engineering? How many did they make it? Did they colonize multiple moons? Did they already colonize on Mars? Did we start on Mars and end up here? Were they on the moon? Were they on multiple space structures? Did they send out satellites that are made out of what looks like like we can grow bricks now. I can send you an article, Live Science. We grow bricks. You can tell a brick how to grow. It's made out of a bacteria. It turns into a brick. You can shape it. You can do whatever you want. Well, what would a satellite look like that was a society that's like, well, we want to go to that galaxy over there. So there's going to be dormant periods. We're just going to hurl it, but it's how it's the propulsion system. If it's magnetic energy based, if it's also working on a sun, a solar, what have you. The reality is that if we're getting signals back to the planet, it's terrifying to think that it's an echoing signal like the Black Knight satellite. It's an echoing technology of a society that's dormant, gone, but yet these satellites could still be traveling and continuing like our Voyagers, and it could be sending signals back, and we're catching them going, we've talked to an alien planet. What if it's worse? What if it's just really us? What if it's just talking to us and we forgot? So now...
That sounds like a great Twilight Zone episode, by the way. I love that. Yeah.
Don't you find it crazy that that's the Twilight Zone? It's easier for us to believe the 100th monkey theory than it is, or a Twilight Zone episode. It's easier for us to comprehend that the first jump is, it's got to be aliens. No, it's actually worse. We have long lost relatives that don't help us, or have and possibly screwed it up and don't want to explain it. So now they're just waiting for us to get just evolved in us that we're not going to want to kill them for how they screwed us up. That's
yeah.
So the possibility that they're getting the responses from people, more of it, it's like, again, it's an easier assumption. It's like, well, aliens helped us. Well, it's an easier place to go than to think that, well, no, I mean, if it was an advanced human, clearly they would help us. Why? You're assuming they didn't cause the problem to begin with, that they didn't retreat far enough and long enough that the people they left on the surface or the people who survived were not in that club. We always take it for granted that there's always, along with dynastic peoples that are creating culture, we've always had Neolithic, Eolithic, we've always had tribal people. We have 150 tribes on Earth. If our computers and laptops and metal and buildings all disappeared, these tribes living in these different nomadic communities, whether jungle, desert, or Arctic Circle, these are people who live without the technologies we have, and their little campfires and their small, their villages, at least the fire pits and assorted other technologies would survive, just like at Virginia Steam McIntyre that has been championed by Michael Cremo for years. 275,000, a 500,000-year-old human site in northern Mexico at Huelaco. That's just one example of how wrong we are about history, where you have a site of ancient humans and you're like, well, that automatically shows a progression of society. No, it shows that throughout all of our history on this planet, maybe all the way back, maybe 4 or 5 billion, but all the way back to the Klerksdorp spheres that look man-made and they're 2.5 to 3.5 billion years old. Maybe there's always been societies that live simply, and what blurs the line in the narrative is, well, we found this Eolith, we found these simple tools. Like, Neolithic tools are simple. Eoliths are the tools they label that are prior. In fact, I have an example. This is glass, but let me show you this. This is a chunk of glass for art. But when you look at this giant chunk, this is a chunk that could be actually, to the trained archaeologist, an eolith, which is a piece of rock that has been banged on enough sides, but just to make it useful. just enough. And so there's fractures and cuttings where you're like, well, that's just a natural course of that stone. But if it's been worked, and eoliths have been found in places that there aren't supposed to be eoliths, but it is a true class of stone tool. And the assumption is, well, if you find an eolith, you found either a devolved or simpler human that came prior. It's never narrated that, no, they're simultaneous. These eolithic tools exist right now within tribal cultures. Not everything they do is a sharp, pointy obsidian or, it's just not recognizable as a tool. So we just have to take it into account that we're not giving it a chance that a very advanced society would easily, either benevolently or otherwise, leave alone some tribal peoples. It could be Neanderthals. It could be Denisovan. And Neanderthals look like they were stronger and had bigger brains, so maybe it wasn't. We always picture Neanderthals as the caveman, but those are artistic renditions. We're not. There's no snapshot that says this is what they look like, but then there's other peoples. We have a mystery 14% DNA strain that we've recently standard academia has acknowledged that there's this, there seems to be another mystery relative about 50,000 plus years ago. Well, okay, that's not a mystery. That's like a kind of a huge deal. And then we have the Paracas. Does any academic institution, anybody listening, want to ask anyone why you have an elongated skulled, naturally born humanoid that none of you have extensive DNA profiles of, and they're just laying there? It's not like one elephant in the room. It's a herd, and it's stampeding your entire party. And there's just no. They did blood work in the 70s. There's some basic stuff, but the Paracas with their suture lines, the forum magnum, everything you could say about them, could any reputable academic institution pick it up and do the testing and be honest about it? Hasn't been done. So now here we are with this broken narrative where we jump to it's interdimensional space traveling aliens. It could possibly be, crappy relatives that just didn't share or closed the bunker early. They saved themselves, or really it was great Uncle Steve who's like, I'd let you in, but I hate my brother. And good luck on the surface. Hope it doesn't completely burn or flood. That's why it's worse. That's the title. It's like all the reasons that the dynastic peoples, whether it's Greek, the Egyptians, the Aztecs, the Mayans, all the dynastic, the hairpin, we don't know a lot about. At least in the West, we're not entirely sure. I feel like that's opening up, but we don't know a lot about what went on in megalithic Japan and megalithic India. We're getting there. There's so much information, but the bottom line is that at some point it goes so sideways. There are definitely dynastic peoples taking over sites that were much more advanced when they took them over, which only leads me to believe that these are people who were never involved or may have been just left as whatever needed to be closed, whatever the doors needed to close to save a few were closed, and everyone was left to fend for themselves. And that's just, sorry, way to spice it. I'm pepping you up, right?
Boy, have you ever read this ex-CIA agent's relatively new book called the something conundrum? It's Chase Brandon is his name, and he wrote about this civilization that lives underneath the earth, and literally this guy is a CIA agent, career CIA, retired, writes a book, and he said he had to get this book vetted by the CIA before he could publish it. The idea being that literally there is a whole civilization living underneath the earth, that literally was either a breakaway civilization or alien. I just thought that was the weirdest thing, that a CIA guy would have to get a novel that he wrote vetted by the CIA because it had to do with an underground civilization.
Was that the... Well, okay, so it recently got back on my radar because there was so much that happened over the 4 years I worked on this book, and I'm actually moving ahead with the second one as a side note.
Nice.
I am actually moving ahead with that. But the Adam and Eve story, The History of the Cataclysms by Chan Thomas, is that the book you're talking about? It's a declassified...
It actually is called the Kryptos Conundrum. I finally remembered. Kryptos Conundrum, meaning that outside of the CIA there is an actual structure, a sculpture, that's called the Kryptos Conundrum. It's supposedly some kind of a, if you could figure out it, it's a message in a sculpture. And basically he called his book that as well. But yeah, Chase Brandon is his name.
That's so interesting. I'm going to look it up because it got put on my radar. A friend of mine said, "Hey, have you heard of this book that was originally published in 1963?" And it was and the book is now a declassified and sanitized document discussing the topic of lost ancient human civilizations and cataclysms that occurred on the Earth thousands of years ago, causing them to vanish. And anyway, it's by a guy named Chan Thomas, and the book was entirely gobbled up by the CIA or American government authorities, and then it was declassified, and the sanitized version has been released. And it's the same thing. It's like, how fictional or otherwise did you write a story that's so close to what likely is more of the truth that they had to redact it? But then it's hard for me to accept that the United States military says, yeah, we've been looking at UFOs. We have these programs. I'm going to tell you and every ufologist out there that we kind of need your help. And yeah, we've been doing it. And we don't know. Well, I can't think of one reason why to put that out there. And I know from the world of disclosure, people like to go, well, they're trying to prep us. No. I think it's just there's too many cell phones. There's too much crap that allows the average person to say that wasn't a weather balloon. I'm sorry, it wasn't a weather balloon. So I don't think it was just a matter of them being caught with the hand in the cookie jar and having to say, oh, this is happening for real. I do think that there's a reason they asked for our help. I do think that we are reaching a higher acceptance level for what's truly going to be. Our true history is so insane, bizarre, beyond what you and I could possibly imagine. I'm looking forward to the journey of discovering what we can while each of us are on this planet. But there are all ways that so many people can participate. You could pick up my book. You could just listen and keep exploring from shows like this. I think that people can have that connection now. Maybe they weren't thinking of a paranormal experience as actually a genetic memory, or vice versa. Maybe there is that ghost or astral planing, or again, they're making this ancient technology, activating them, but they didn't have a word for it. They didn't have a technology associated with it. That maybe as we all become more conscious and go at these things, we can also help archaeologists. I do think not enough is done for them in reference to allowing them to fail. I think they need to be paid not to find things. And what I mean by that is if they find the wrong things, they're told to hide it or put it away or what have you, or your career's lost. I think we need archaeologists to have the payment and the funding to not only do what they think their thesis is, but to dig through a site down to the bedrock. And if they find things that change the narrative, they should be encouraged and rewarded, not punished. And I mean, there's a lot of logistics we can get into, how personal self-experimentation, meditations, not some woo-woo thing, but actual Wim Hof type stuff where you're really reconnecting with old, ancient, dormant systems that are built in. It's not just the placebo effect is written off as luck almost, that you cure cancer, that you've cured diseases, that the placebo effect of you just thinking positively, that just random helped you. We're just too well designed. And, we could do a whole show just talking about the medical vibrational frequency side of this stuff. And I do think that we are well on the way to being more conscious to the point where it won't shock us to know the truth of why we are so advanced now. I mean,
that has always been in the back of my mind, is indeed when and if we do find out the truth in certain areas. You know, when the house of cards starts falling or something. Are we indeed going to be able to handle that in some respects? I wonder. I've tried to be a critical thinker, and I'm wondering what if the truth is so bizarre, so unique, that it's almost very difficult for us, even in our current stage of hopefully raising our consciousness, even now, what if we are not able to handle the truth? Wouldn't that be weird?
But I appreciate your point, because then it really illustrates my whole, it's not aliens, worse. It's us. Yeah. How you feel about it. It makes me feel worse.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be someone I don't know. Please be from somewhere else in the galaxy. Please be from Mars. Please be from anywhere. Don't be some crappy relative that didn't show up to Christmas.
Yeah, or you know, they're time traveling back to warn us about something, you know, for some reason. Oh my goodness.
Well, there's you know, I know that Stephen. I know that the theory was, well, if they could, why haven't they already done it? Yeah. And either way, or they got back here and worse, they're like, let's not tell them.
That's right.
they'll work it out.
There's been plenty of those scenarios in films. I literally, I love time travel films that have a twist to them.
Oh yeah, I do too. It's so hard to do it right because there's so many paradoxes. It's so difficult. It's such a challenging format for a movie, but everyone loves a good story, and I do think a lot of the reason we love good stories is because it's not just because it follows a formula that's instinctively. I think there's a reason behind why we like, again, something as epic as Lord of the Rings, or even the space stuff, whether it's Star Wars or otherwise. I do think that it is ringing something, along with the frequencies and ranges of the most popular musics and stuff like that. I think we are drawn to many things unconsciously that really do relate to a connectivity that we're missing. And it's not just some woo-woo hippie, everybody love each other. I think there is actual power and way more than just positive energy in that connectivity between the human race. And I think we're getting back to it, but it's been challenging with certain forces.
And don't you think there are some large cycles that we're dealing with in this whole scenario as well, that maybe we've been here before in some version that we're doing it again?
Yeah, so the idea of, like, I do touch on the precession of the stars and the equinoxes and the whole idea of the precession, you know, 26,500 year cycle, give or take, that, you know, where we have these epics of rise and fall, of just epic failure and success, and then we start over like it's some seriously twisted Groundhog's Day.
I like it.
You know, it's like, we've totally made full consciousness. What's that? It's a meteor. And then, Nama, what? And then, let's eat our former best friend on 4 legs. You know, that I do think that there's a possibility that, like, to tell, like, let's say that there's, again, you tell your kid, hey, watch that star, but would you tell your kid to watch that star? Would you tell the next family to watch that star? And I think there's, don't get me, I have a theory, but I think every 26,500 years there's a cycle. And all we got to do to make sure it's a pattern is not just watch it once, but at least watch it. You could take up, if you're a betting man, do you get like 1 or 2 processions in to go, I think there's a pattern? Or has the procession been watched at least twice? That's 53,000 years right there.
Yeah.
So then the question is, we have placed a lot of traditions. One of the other fall downs isn't just our stories that we've told ourselves post-flood. Part of those stories involve dynastic peoples being, you know, you've come across a very large structure that has certain alignments. What's north, north, south, south, east, east. But what do we do with alignments with star systems? And we're like, well, everybody was building temples and everything was sacred. And in between hunting and building big buildings, they knew everything was sacred. So all they did was build temples. And all they did was care about where Orion was and Sirius. And all they cared about was the stars. Okay, but again, that's post-Diluvian peoples. What about pre, that had high technology satellites and other systems? They might have liked the stars too, but to them, it may not have been a ritual that they were working around. The true megalithic builders could have been looking at star systems way beyond ours. They may very well have been pragmatic about the star systems and what they were and what they are, but we don't have eyes on them yet.
Oh, man. Jared Murphy, I tell you what, every time you come on Spaced Out Sunday, I literally have a whole nother perspective. It's hard for me to get to sleep after a show like this, believe me. Thank you very much for being here and going the full force with us on the show. We're going to have you come back. I think things are happening so quickly on the planet that we're going to have to stay in touch, you and I.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can see each other at an actual convention one of these days.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely. And Jared, thank you again. It's been a real pleasure. We're going to have you back soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. We'll be talking to you later. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back next Sunday night with more of Spaced Out Sunday.
Are we out?
People came from miles around to throw their trash down in to see the was and listen for it again. That movie, that fake movie, the portion of Alphonse's land. They are sitting down under with the land. The bells were covered and so never could be found, so no one would know which deep down there was
Well, I want to remind everyone that Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. You can find out more information and music at bumblefoot.com. A special thanks to everyone listening in at home and in your cars, at work and in the chat rooms tonight, wherever you are around the world. Remember, the show is currently copyrighted by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for sharing your evening with us, folks, because together, my friends, we own the night. Good night, everyone. We will see you next Sunday on Spaced Out Sunday.